Overlord Volume 5 Chapter 5 Extinguished, Sword Sparks of Fire Part 1 Lower Fire Month, 9th month, 3rd day 1207 The brothel is just behind this door. According to the assassin, there ought to be an entrance in the building over there too. Sebas stood at the entrance to the brothel, in front of the door where Tswer had been thrown out. Then he pointed at a building several houses away. Brain and Climb had been present when he was questioning the assassin, but they had not been to the brothel before, and they accepted Sebas' explanation at face value. Indeed, that is so. The entrances can also serve as escape routes, and that person said they'd be manned by at least 2 people. If we're splitting up, we should let you handle the main door, Sebas-sama will climb, and I take the other entrance. What do you think? I am not opposed to that. How about you, Climb-kun? I have no objections either. Still, what will we do after we break in, Unglaus-sama? Shall we search together? Call me Brain in future. This one also humbly requests you do the same, Sebas-sama. Then, usually, we ought to move in pairs for safety's sake, but there might be secret tunnels which even the assassin hasn't heard of. We should search the interior as quickly as possible, while Sebas-sama makes his assault from the front. Also, there are usually passages which only the boss knows, Brain added quietly. In that case, should we split up after going in? We're taking a risk just going in anyway. Might as well try for the best results we can. Sebas and Climb nodded at Brain's statement. Could I ask you to search the interior, Brain-sama? You're stronger than me, after all. Very well. Then please watch over the exit over there, Climb-kun. One was more likely to encounter enemies when searching the inside of the building. It went to follow that the task would thus be more dangerous. Therefore, it was best left to Brain, who was much stronger than Climb. So that's it for our final checks, then? They had already discussed this matter on the way to the brothel, but there were some decisions which could only be made after seeing the place in person. They would hash out the details here, and nobody contradicted Sebas' statement. Sebas stepped forward, moving up to the solid-looking metal door. Climb would never be able to budge that door, but to Sebas it was little more than tissue paper. The defenses were bound to be heaviest in this place, but neither of them were worried about Sebas charging in there by himself. After all, the aggressor was someone whom even Gazef Stronov, renowned as the mightiest warrior in the surrounding nations, and Brain Unglaus, who could fight Gazef to a draw, could not hope to defeat even if they joined forces. This was no longer within the sphere of human ability. Then let us proceed. According to the assassin, the secret signal at the other entrance is knocking 4 times on the door. I doubt either of you have forgotten, but I doubt a reminder will hurt. Thank you, Sebas-sama. Climb had not forgotten, but he thanked Sebas anyway. Also, I will try to take them alive, but if they resist, I will slay them without mercy. I trust there will be no problems with that. Brain and Climb felt a chill down their spines as they saw Sebas' gentle smile. His methods were perfectly sound. Both of them would probably have done the same if they were in Sebas' shoes. Even so, a thrill of fear pierced their backs, because Sebas' expression and his words made him seem like he had a split personality. He was both a kindly gentleman and a cold-blooded warrior. He contained both humanity and heartlessness within himself to an extreme degree. They had a premonition that if Sebas went in like this, he might end up slaughtering everyone inside. Climb nervously told Sebas, I feel that taking a few lives is unavoidable, but it might be good to avoid needless killing. We are few in number, after all. Still, if you encounter someone in charge who looks like they're from 8 fingers, could I trouble you to try and capture them? If we can interrogate a big figure among them, we can reduce the number of lives lost in the future. I am not a mass murderer, and I did not come here for a massacre. Please be at ease. Climb was relieved to see Sebas smile. Please forgive me. We shall leave the rest to you. Diamond suit now then, destroying this place in one go ought to buy some time. Sebas felt that wrecking this brothel ought to put a stop to their interference with his life. If things went well and he managed to obtain secret documents, or the like, they might end up too busy dealing with the fallout to bother about Swear at all. However badly things went, he could give Swear a chance to escape as long as he managed to buy some time. And who knew, he might be able to find a better solution. There was a merchant in Irantal who approached me for a cordial chat. I wonder if he could help? Swear would still need someone trustworthy to aid her even if she managed to pull herself together. That was the only way she would have a better life. Sabas turned to face the heavy steel door once more. He remembered that day when Swear had been dumped here as he touched the door's surface. It was made of wood sheathed in metal plates, making it both thick and heavy. It was immediately apparent that an ordinary human being would have a lot of trouble breaking this door down without tools. I wonder if Klimkoen is all right. He was not worried about the man called Brain Unglaus. Even if he crossed blades with Succulent, he probably would not lose. However, Clim was a different matter. There was no way that Clim could beat Succulent. It had been Saba's idea to storm the brothel, so as one volunteering his assistance, Clim should have been prepared for his own death. However, Sabas could not help but think that the young, compassionate man, who only wanted to help would end up losing his life for nothing. I wish young men like him could live longer. Those words were characteristic of a senior citizen. However, Sabas had been made in the form of an old man. He was technically younger than Clim, if one counted from their moment of genesis until right now. It would be best if I took down Succulent by myself. That would be the most ideal course of events. I hope they don't run into him. Sabas prayed to the 41 supreme beings for Clim's safety. If Succulent was the strongest fighter here, it was very likely he would be pitted against Sabas. However, if he were a bodyguard, he might be assigned to escort his charge to safety. Feeling a little anxious, Sabas grabbed the door's handle and turned. It stopped halfway through its turn. Naturally, the door to an underground enterprise like this would be locked. I am not adept at opening locks. However, it can't be helped. I'll do it my way, Sabas muttered to himself in frustration. Then he lowered himself and folded his right hand into a knife hand, moving his left hand forward as he took a stance. Said stance was immaculate, as stable as the mountains, and as picturesque as a 1,000-year-old cedar tree. Ye art. What followed next was an unbelievable sight. His arm sank into the metal door, at the hinge. No, the arm was still making grinding noises as it bored its way into the door. The hinges shrieked as they were torn from the wall. Sabas opened the unresisting door. What the hell? Inside was a passage which ended at a pair of double doors. In front of that stood a bearded powerhouse of a man. His mouth was open and he had a retarded look on his face. The door was rusty, so I had to use a bit of force to open it. You should probably oil the hinges. Saying so, Sabas closed the door. No, it would be more accurate to say that he leaned the door against the frame. While the man was still frozen in shock, Sabas stepped inside, without any hesitation whatsoever. Oi, what was that? The hell was that noise? More male voices came from behind the first one. However, the man facing Sabas did not bother about them. Instead, he addressed Sabas, "Er, welcome?" Completely baffled, the man stood stock still as Sabas walked up to him. The people working here were used to violence. However, the scene before him far exceeded what he had encountered in his accumulated experiences. The man smiled to Sabas in an ingratiating manner, ignoring the shouted queries of his colleagues from behind him. His survival instinct told him that the best choice here was to get into Sabas' good graces. Or no, perhaps he had reacted like this because he had deceived himself into thinking Sabas was the butler of one of the customers here. The sight of a big, bearded man trying to keep a twitching smile on his face was quite hard to bear. Sabas smiled back at him. That smile was gentle and compassionate. Yet, there was no trace of goodwill in his eyes. It was more like a deadly, entrancing gleam of light playing along a razor-sharp sword's edge. Could I trouble you to let me pass? Thump. Or rather, it was more of a splat. A nauseating sound echoed throughout the interior. He was a muscular man in armor. He weighed 85 kilograms at the very least. He now spun through the air like some kind of joke, flying to the side at speeds invisible to the naked eye. His body savagely impacted the nearby wall, with a wet splattering sound. The entire building shook violently, as though a giant's fist had struck it. Oh dear. I should have killed him deeper inside. That way he'd have made a better barricade. Ah well. There's more coming anyway, so I just need to be more careful afterwards. After admonishing himself to go easier next time, Sebas walked past the corpse and headed within. He flung the doors open and entered the room beyond. It was an exquisitely furnished viewing room. It felt more like he was walking through an empty house than invading an enemy base. There were two men within. Their eyes goggled open and their jaws dropped as they looked behind Sebas, at the enormous blood splatter that had painted the entire wall red. The smell of cheap alcohol hung in the air, a scent which one would never find in Nazareth. It blended immediately with the stench of fresh blood, viscera, and internal wastes, brewing up a revolting odor. Sebas went over the information he had obtained from Swear and the assassin, then tried to figure out the building's structure. Her memories were spotty, and she had not recalled anything important, but she had told Sebas that the actual establishment was located underground. The assassin had not gone underground himself, so his information would be no good after this. He looked to the ground. However, the trapdoor leading underground was cunningly concealed, and Sebas could not find it. Still, if he could not find it, then all he had to do was ask someone who knew where it was. Excuse me. I'd like to ask you a question. The man he addressed immediately responded with a hoarse scream. It would seem that he had no intention of putting up a fight. That relieved Sebas. Whenever he thought of Swear, he could not control his fists, and he would slay his opposition in a single blow. Since he had no intention to fight, breaking both his legs ought to be enough. The terrified man backed away from Sebas, trembling against the wall as he did. Sebas looked impassionately on the man's shameful display, and smiled thinly with his mouth alone. That frightened the man even more. The stench of ammonia filled the room. It would seem he had scared the man too badly. Sebas wrinkled his brow. The other man had collapsed to the ground. His eyes had rolled up in his skull so all that could be seen were the whites. Apparently the extreme pressure had been too much for him, and he had passed out. The other man looked on him in envy. Like I was saying, I'd like to ask you a question. It's like this, I would like to go underground. Could you tell me how to get there? That's. The man was too afraid to betray his organization. Sebas could see the fear in his eyes. Much like those assassins, this man seemed to be afraid of reprisals from his organization. Sebas recalled the man he had met that night, and how he had run away with Sebas' money. The retribution in question was probably synonymous with death. The man was still hesitating over whether or not to speak, when Sebas cut through his reluctance with his next words. There are two people who can speak here. I don't necessarily have to ask you, you know? The man's forehead broke out in oily sweat, and his back shuddered. THTH here. Over there. There's a hidden door there. Over there, HM. Sebas looked where the man had indicated. At a closer look, there was a tiny crevice in the ground, separating part of the floor from the rest. I see. Thank you. Your usefulness to me is now at an end. Sebas smiled, and the man realized what happened to him after those words. His face turned gray and he trembled uncontrollably. Still, he clung to a faint hope and cried, Please, please don't kill me. No. Sebas' prompt answer froze the room solid. The man's eyes went wide, in the way humans did when they were trying to reject a reality they did not want to believe. But I told you, didn't I? Please, I'll do anything, just spare me. Indeed you did. However, Sebas sighed deeply. I cannot. Are you kidding me? You can take it as a jest if you wish. However, the outcome will still be the same, no? Oh, God. Sebas recalled the tragic state of Tswer when he had rescued her, and he narrowed his eyes. What right did villains have to beg the gods for aid? More to the point, Sebas' gods were the 41 supreme beings. The man's plea was like an insult to them. You reap what you sow. Those words, as cold and hard as steel, slashed through all hope and made the man painfully aware of his own demise. Would he choose to fight, or would he choose flight? Given only an instant to decide, the man chose immediately. He chose flight. He would meet an unspeakable fate if he dared fight Sebas. That much went without saying. In that case, he might as well flee. Doing so would grant him a faint possibility of survival. He was correct to think that way. By doing so, he had prolonged his life by a few seconds, or rather, a few tenths of a second. The man ran towards the door. Sebas caught up with him in an instant, and his body whirled. A swift wind blew across the man's head, and his body collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been cut. A ball hit the wall and slid to the ground, trailing blood in its wake. A moment later, the man's headless body spewed a geyser of blood from its neck, covering the ground in gore. That technique was nigh unto divine. Just the feat of decapitating someone with a roundhouse kick would have required incredible strength and speed, but the most impressive thing was that Sebas' shoes had not been stained at all. Sebas' leather shoes padded across the ground to the other, unconscious man. He raised his leg and stamped, hard. There was a sound like dry branches breaking. The man twitched several times, and then his body went still. When you look back on everything you have done so far, is this fate not to be expected? Still, be at ease. Your bodies will be used to make some small amends for your sins. Sebas reached for the corpses. His plan was to mutilate the cadavers and arrange them on the steps as a warning to frighten anyone who intended to flee via the stairs and leave them unable to advance or retreat. Sebas to do so since he could not wreck the exit. After arranging the collected corpses, Sebas walked towards the hidden door in the floor. First, there was the sound of metal components breaking. Then, there was a large hole in the ground. The smashed door slid down the stairs below with a resonant crash. I see, if I destroy this staircase, they should not be able to escape through here. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. It was a small room. The only furniture in this almost empty room was a cabinet and a bed. The mattress was not a simple mass of straw bedding, but an actual cotton-stuffed mattress. It was well made, of the sort that noble homes might use. However, this mattress was designed for functionality, and so it looked plain, without any decorating. A naked man sat on the mattress. He was well into his middle years, and gluttony had made his frame flabby. His looks had originally been average at best, but putting on the pounds had made him that much uglier. He looked like a pig from every angle. Incidentally, pigs were intelligent and cute animals who loved cleanliness. The word pig in this case was a derogatory term used to describe stupid, boorish and filthy people. His name was Stefan Havish. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. He raised his fist and punched down onto the mattress. The sound of flesh striking flesh rang forth. A look of delight blossomed on Stefan's face. The sensation of smashing flesh traveled up his arm, and his body shivered even as goosebumps of pleasure sprouted on him. He slowly raised his fist, whose knuckles were now stained with sticky gore. Stefan was pressing down a naked woman. Her face was swollen and bruised, and the skin was flecked with spots of blood. Her nose was broken and the blood leaking from it had clotted on her skin. Her lips and eyelids were similarly swollen, completely distorting her originally beautiful face. There were bruises on the rest of her body, but the damage was worst on her face. The sheets around them were stained with old, dried blood. She had been trying to protect her face with her hands until just now, but now her arms lay limp on the bed. Her hair spread out messily on the mattress, like it was floating in water. Oi, what's with you? Tired already? Huh? The woman seemed to be unconscious. Stefan raised his fist and punched downwards. With a thud, his fist connected with her cheekbone, and pain surged up Stefan's hand. His face twisted. Che. That hurt, you bitch. He angrily punched her again. The mattress creaked in time with the thud of flesh striking flesh. Her swollen skin split, staining his knuckles with blood. Said blood splattered stickily onto the mattress, dyeing it with carmine spots. You. The woman no longer struggled despite the beating. There was no response from her body. Non-stop bludgeoning like this could end up killing someone. However, the woman had survived, but not because Stefan had been merciful. The woman clung to life because the mattress had dissipated the force of the blows. Had she been beaten while lying on a harder bed, she might well be dead by now. Stefan had been brutal, but not because he knew about that effect of the mattress. Rather, it was because the woman's death did not concern him. All that was needed was to pay to dispose of the problem. In truth, Stefan had beaten several women to death in this place. However, he had to pay for the cleanup every time he killed someone, which strained his wallet. Thus, he unconsciously went easy on them. As he looked down at the woman's unmoving face, Stefan licked his lips. This brothel was perfect for satisfying unique sexual fetishes. Normal bordellos would not permit their customers to do such things. Well, perhaps they might, but Stefan did not know of any such places. Life was good when slavery had been permitted. Slaves were a form of property, and people who manhandled them had been scorned. It was just like how others would roll their eyes at people who threw their money around. However, slaves had been the only way for someone like Stefan, with his special sexual preferences, to satisfy his desires. Without them, Stefan had been forced to slake his lust in this place. Who knew what would have happened had he not known about this establishment? There was no doubt that he would have committed a crime and gotten arrested. Stefan was practically tearing up in gratitude towards his noble master, who had recommended this place to him. Naturally, it was so that he could use his power for his master's benefit. Thank you, my master. A look of calm came over Stefan's eyes. It was hard to imagine that he could be so grateful to his liege given his personality and his sexual proclivities. However, the embers of a flame blazed up in the depths of his belly, the flames of wrath. This emotion was directed at the woman who had deprived him of slaves with which to satisfy his lusts. That bitch. His face turned red with anger, and his eyes were bloodshot. He imagined the face of the royal whom he should have been serving, the princess, on the body of the woman beneath him. Stefan gathered the anger within himself into his fist, and laid into the helpless woman. Fresh blood flew with every blow he struck. If only I could smash that face of hers. How good would that feel? He rained punch after punch into the woman's face. His fist struck her cheek, and a surprising quantity of blood spurted from between the woman's swollen lips. Perhaps she had cut the inside of her mouth on her teeth. The woman's sole response to this beating was to tremble slightly. Hew, hew. After a few more strikes, Stefan was panting as his shoulders rose and fell. His body and forehead were slick with sweat. Stefan looked at the woman he had pinned underneath him. Her condition could only be described as tragic, and she was close to death at this point. What lay there was a puppet whose strings had been cut. Stefan swallowed audibly. Nothing pleased him more than to rape a battered and bloody woman. The prettier she had originally been, the better. There was no better way to satisfy his sadistic desires than to destroy something beautiful. If only I could fuck that woman like this. Stefan thought of the haughty features which belonged to the young lady of the house which he had just visited. She was as beautiful as the princess, who was herself known as the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. Of course, Stefan was very clear that he would not have the chance to abuse such a high-class lady. The only people Stefan could indulge his fetishes with were the dregs of humanity, who had been dumped into this brothel, to be used and then discarded. Such a beautiful woman would surely be bought up by a wealthy and powerful noble for a huge sum. She would then be spirited away to his domain and live in seclusion, in order to keep her sale from becoming public knowledge. How I wish I could beat up a woman like that, beat her to death. How happy and satisfied would he be if he could do that? Of course, that was nothing more than a madman's ravings. Stefan looked down at the woman crushed beneath him. Her bare bosom was moving slightly. He smiled lewdly as he confirmed that fact. Stefan reached down to grab the woman's breasts, deforming the soft flesh between his fingers. The woman did not react at all. She was on the verge of death, and could not respond to such trivial pain. The woman Stefan was squeezing differed from a doll only in the softness of her body. However, Stefan was somewhat dissatisfied by her lack of resistance. "Save me. Spare me. I'm sorry. Please stop." The woman's cries echoed in Stefan's mind. Should he have fucked her while she still had the strength left to scream? Stefan continued squeezing her breasts, a vague sense of regret in his heart. Most of the women who had been sent to this brothel were no longer in a right state of mind. They had chosen to run away from reality. When one took that into consideration, the woman chosen to serve Stefan today had been better off than most. Was that woman like this too? Stefan imagined swear. He had no interest in what happened to the brothel employee who had let her go. However, when he thought of the butler he had encountered during his visit, Stefan could not suppress the mocking laughter in his heart. That thing had coupled with countless men, and even with female or non-human partners. There was no point in protecting her at all. And yet that old butler had said he was willing to pay hundreds of gold coins for her. It was a miracle he had not laughed out loud on the spot. Ah, the woman who ran away screamed very well too. He searched through his memories and recalled her wails. She had been fairly normal by the standards of the girl sent to this brothel. Stefan smiled lewdly, and began to slake his bestial lust. He seized one of the pinned woman's bare legs and spread it wide. Her emaciated, slender leg was thin enough that Stefan could encircle it with one hand. Stefan pressed himself between the woman's legs. As he grasped his tool, now turgid from the burning desire that consumed his body, the door behind him clicked and slowly opened. Ah! Stefan hurriedly turned back, and a vaguely familiar old man appeared within his field of view. Then he remembered who that old man was. It was the butler he had met at that mansion. The soles of the old man's, Seba's, shoes clicked neatly as he walked into the room. Stefan was speechless in the face of his casual, natural movements. What was that house's butler doing here? Why had he come to this room? Stefan's mind went blank in the face of this inexplicable situation. Sebas walked up to Stefan. Then he saw the woman crushed beneath Stefan's bulk. After that, Sebas directed an incomparably frigid glare at Stefan. "You like to beat people, do you?" Ah! The strange mood in the air drove Stefan to rise as he went for his clothes. However, Sebas moved faster than him. A thwop resounded in Stefan's ears, and then his vision shook wildly. A beat later, Stefan's right cheek caught fire as burning, stinging heat radiated out from it. He had been struck. No, in this case it would be more appropriate to say he had been slapped. It took a while for Stefan to realize that. "Damn you, how dare!" A ringing thwop resounded off Stefan's face. It was soon followed by many more. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, stop. Stefan had always been the one who hit others. Nobody had ever hit him. These few blows left him in tears. He raised his hand to protect his face as he stumbled back